Hey everyone, Mimir here. This is a continuation of a previous topic. If you haven't watched any parts before this, go check them out. And as always, thanks for listening. So, I just want to say for the first half, we did talk a lot about Korra, so I wanted to bring it back around to the last Airbender. Um, I kind of want to talk a little bit about like the real life influences and everything that it played on the show.
I'm not a super big authority on a lot of that, but I do know that I mean, it's obvious to anyone with even just passing familiarity that it's inspired by a lot of Eastern philosophy and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know a little bit, but I had to pull up just that way I get like some of the more like intricate stuff correct. But I wanted to talk a little bit about like the fighting styles and everything because I thought that was really cool. They did a lot of research on that stuff.
They did.
And had like a lot of I don't know if they necessarily did like mocap stuff. I can't remember. Just that way they got like some of the movements like exact and threw like the mocap into animation and like
I don't think it
based
was
off
quite
that.
in mocap. I think they did have like studying examples, like they did actually like look at practitioners practicing the styles and then based a lot of their animation style off of that.
Yeah, it was something like that. But I do like how they had like four different fighting styles for like each of the bending and everything. Like it was, let's see, like Tai Chi was very like water bending. That was the like movements and everything. Because it's if you watch like Tai Chi, it's very fluid motions and very like I want to say
Like
it's very like flowing.
yes, like a lot of it involves like flowing movements and like wide sweeps of the arms and legs and stuff like that, and bending the body. And yeah, it's very thematically appropriate for the water element.
Yeah, and then I I think there's a different name for this one. I can't pronounce it, so don't hate me for this. It's Bagwazhang. I think that's, but it's
Bagua, I
like
think
yeah, it's Bagua is like the like shortened term for it or whatever, which is the airbending. I don't know really much about that like style. I don't really know a whole lot about Bagua.
uh, as far as I'm aware, like just from remembering my own notes on this and talking about martial arts styles with people, it's yeah, primarily based off of evasion techniques and stuff like that.
Yeah, and let's see. The other one is Hungar for earthbending. I also really don't know a whole lot about that either. um,
Yeah,
let's
don't look at me for that one. That's that one's a little off my radar. As far as I'm aware, it's only for like strong stances, and I don't know. That's pretty much all I can remember someone saying about it. It's like power stances and stuff like that is a big emphasis on that style.
yeah, it's like very like strong techniques. Um, let me see here. I guess it's a
I th-
southern Chinese martial art.
yep, and I think I remember what the fire style was based off of. But why don't you go ahead and say so, just because you you have the notes.
Northern Shaolin.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, which is Hungar is another like it's a Shaolin style. But I guess Northern Shaolin. Let's see, external martial arts of Northern China, referring to those styles from the Northern Shaolin Monastery in Henyan, and specifically the style practiced by. Yep, you're not getting me to say that name.
Before we add ourselves as completely culturally illiterate.
Yeah. um, and I really like how even within that, they had the uh, Chugar Southern Praying Mantis style for Toph. And I think that was actually, if I remember right, it was invented by another blind martial artist. I think there was a lady who like formed that style, and she was also like a blind martial artist, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me see if I can
That
find out more about it while you talk.
that would make sense, and I do like how in the universe of Avatar they also talk about how all of their styles are inspired by different aspects of reality around them, which is actually the origin of a lot of martial arts, where someone will be looking around and then they'll be like, "Huh, that's an interesting way that creature moves." Like in Avatar, they talk about how like, oh, look at those dragons and the way they twist and turn. It's like I think I could make a martial art out of that. It's like that the history of the world explained or whatever. It's like you can make a martial art out of this. Sees bison fly through the air. You can make a martial art out of this. Uh, I think yeah, and Toph had I think more than once talked about how badger moles are like the originators of earthbending and how she learned from them, and she talked about how yeah, badger moles are also blind, and so we had this sort of connection because they realized I was blind too, and then they're like, oh, let's teach her earthbending, and I thought that was very cool as well, and let's see, the waterbenders learning about push and pull from the moon. I'm guessing the more practical explanation for that is that they watched the tides and realized they could affect the tides themselves with how the moon worked. Like they could sort of sense that the moon was the one pulling the tides in and out, and so they were like, "Huh, let's see if we can mimic that." And from the pushing and pulling, everything else just sort of developed or flowed, as it were, from there. Let's see. There was also yeah, I already mentioned the talk of the dragons. The dragons one is pretty cool. I definitely liked the way dragons were portrayed in Avatar. I really wish we could get a really cool story for how Zuko got his dragon, or maybe just I haven't heard about it. But uh, between the last Airbender and then Korra, he gets his own dragon, and I'm just like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah. Sorry. So it looks like I think it was. This is saying like some other men that did it, but I heard that it was like uh some woman who was blind or whatever. So maybe I heard wrong, but I I like to think that that was kind of true because that'd be cool to kind of have that influence. But yeah,
Oh
the
yeah,
the dragon. There was something I seen about that. What was it? I think it was something like Aang helped him get the dragon or something. God, I can't
like
remember that either.
the episode where they went in search of the original. Like, yeah, there's the episode where like Zuko can't firebend for some reason, so they
Well,
go to look for the original source of firebending, which is dragons.
well, yeah, there was that, but I'm talking about there was an actual something that was talked about for like how Zuko got his dragon later on.
I must have totally missed out on that because
I
as
don't think
far
it
as
was
I know,
in the
he just
show.
gets it.
I don't. Yeah, it wasn't in the show. Um, so I'm thinking it was something like later on afterwards, like an in between, obviously, But
Yeah,
um,
but yeah, no, beats me. I'd have to look it up. I mean, to be fair, I haven't read all the comics and all the in between stuff. I know that some of it isn't considered canon. Uh, I had someone tell me once it's like, yeah, some of it's just offshoot that was studio approved, but it wasn't made by the original writers, so technically it's not canon. And so I was like, oh, great. Well, then what's the point?
yeah. Let's see if I can find that. How did Zuko?
I mean, I shouldn't sound too facetious because again, I've already outed myself as a guy who reads and sometimes writes fan fiction, so I should, watch my mouth when I discredit non-canon sources. But at the same time, I'm also thinking like, if this is just like a one-off thing that's based around an idea, and that idea isn't going to hold water past this one thing, like, what's the point? Like, it's a cool story, but it's only just going to be a cool story. Like, it's never going to carry past this. Another thing I remember thinking about also is talking about like the cool implications of some of the powers. I think Avatar did a great job showcasing like the architecture and how the world is slightly different yet the same based on the fact that benders exist. Like the fact that the Fire Nation is shown as being like the site of like an industrial revolution compared to all the rest of the world, because their ability to manipulate fire leads to an advanced understanding of metallurgy, which in turn leads them to building metal warships as opposed to everybody else who just still has like regular wood ships when they go in the water, which gives the Fire Nation a massive advantage, especially because they're also an island nation, and naturally they'll have a much better understanding of things like sailing and naval warfare and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I remember being thoroughly impressed. Like even in hindsight, I remember being very impressed about. They talked about how like different fleets have different dispatch offices that orders are relayed through. And I think it's like, yeah, it's when Zuko and Katara are trying to track down the Southern Raiders to try and track down their leader or whatever. They raid one of the offices, and just like the with how in depth they're going into it, it's just like, oh, this is like it's a kids show, so it doesn't really go too much into it. But the implication, the fact that these offices exist, and the fact that they're staffed, and that there's fleets on different missions, and the fleets send back reports and orders, and it all goes up this big chain of command. It really showcases like, wow, this is an elaborate operation. This is a full on like a fully fledged military. Like there's thousands and thousands of people all working together, like not just the ship crews, but logistics wise and supply wise in order to keep all this stuff going.
Um, Sorry, the music stopped. I was trying to get that back up.
No, you're good.
Yeah, it looks like from what this is saying, it just sounds like he must have went back because he's a descendant from the other two dragons. So he must have went back and had like an egg or something. I think there was an egg in the episode where they went there. I think there was like a big golden egg or something that was there. So maybe that was the egg, and so then he went back and found him and raised him.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, to be fair, like the humans not understanding fully the ways of dragons is also a thing that pops up a fair bit. Like the in Game of Thrones, I always thought it was somewhat realistic, but also amusing how dragon eggs. Everyone thought that the eggs that Daenerys was getting were petrified because it's like, oh, look at them, they're stones. They're just they're basically fancy paperweights. But then it turns out it's like, no, those are real eggs. They're live eggs, and you just have no idea what you're talking about because you have no idea how to hatch them.
Yeah, and since we don't really know a whole lot about the dragons or really any of the beasts in the show, I mean, we know very little. Like you said before about like the badger moles. I mean, they're a pretty big like creature that they have like a special meaning, and then so do the sky bisons.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have a pretty big meaning to like the Airbender culture, and the dragons have a big meaning with the Fire Nation. But with all of that, we still don't really know like a whole lot about any of the creatures. I kind of wish they would have like a, maybe they do, but I wish they would have kind of like a bestiary where we could learn about like all these creatures and like how they interact with each other, with the people and everything, and kind of like the history about them. I know I know we're coming back to Korra again, but I know in Korra we had what's it called? Like that flashback with I don't remember his name now. What was it, like Ping or something? I don't know.
Ping.
He was like the guy who ran away with the firebending power. Do you remember any of that?
Oh, you mean Avatar One? The story of Avatar One, the first Avatar, who he got firebending and then ran off with it
Yeah. Okay.
from the lion turtle. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
So
that's like, yeah, that'd be cool.
so
And
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say it shows the part of like all those other creatures and everything. So we kind of get an understanding of how how the world is a little weird outside of civilization for like each of the like nations and everything. On the backs of uh, the what are they? The dragon turtles, you said? I think is what they're
Lion
called.
turtles.
Lion turtles, yeah. Um, so they're separated, and they have like their different cultures on these turtles or near these turtles. Um, but like out in the wild and out in the world and everything, like the whole world is this weird place with all these like spirits and like creatures that are way different. And I'm just kind of curious as to like how things changed and morphed from that until like what we see in uh, the Last Airbender and Korra and everything.
Yeah, that actually brings up something, and again, we're trudging right back into Korra. But real quick, I will mention though that it is interesting though, like the bestiary idea, where it's like there's all these creatures where it's um, like moose lions at one point is a creature that Sokka encounters, or saber tooth moose lion or some kind, or like
Yeah.
all these creatures that are like two or three things merged together, and it's like, okay, clearly you understand what a like. Oh, at one point they're even talking about, they're like, clearly you understand what a bear is, and they keep mentioning like four different kinds of bear merged with other animals,
Well, yeah,
and then there,
because there's only like if you look at there's that one king or whatever who had a bear. He was just a bear.
yeah, and everybody was like, that's so weird, just a bear, and I'm just like, okay, you all know what a bear is, but for some reason that's weird to you. Like, how does the animal society, how does animals work?
Yeah.
Like
How
none of this
does
makes
animals
sense.
work?
How does animals work? That, yeah, put that on a t-shirt. I no, it's like I didn't understand it. I was just like, how does that not make sense to you? And I guess my sort of running theory that I have with it is that like when like all these animals existed on their own in the world, but I don't know, at some point maybe some spirit bullshit happened and they started merging animals. Because if there's one thing that they did a good job portraying in the in Korra, I think it's that a lot of these spirits don't think the way humans do. And like who knows, maybe just like some spirit came along and was like, huh, that's that's a bear, and that's I don't know, a squirrel or something. Guess what, I'm gonna make a squirrel bear.
Well,
Boom,
they
better
had
creature.
the what the platypus bears.
Platypus bears, yep, that's the one.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean the just kind of like the makeup of all of the different types of animals and everything. It really does kind of make you think about, okay, well, did something kind of form these together, or did they evolve like this, or has it been like this always and they just know that, okay, well, if something is like a platypus bear, well, maybe there's something, that has like a similar makeup, so then they're like, okay, well, if it has these features, these characteristics, then it has like bear in it, but they don't know what a bear is. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like we could, if we looked at a liger, we could be like, okay, well, that's lion and tiger, but maybe we don't know what a lion and tiger is. We just see, okay, stripes. We're gonna associate that with tiger. We see like a mane or something. We're gonna associate that with a lion. And then when we see one of those types of characteristics separated from like the original unit, I guess we could call it, and they're like, whoa, like that's got tiger in it, but what is it? Like, it doesn't have anything else. That's just tiger. Like,
no beaver teeth, no webbed feet. Like, what the fuck is that thing? And it's
yeah, so I could see it being something like that, where it's like they have terms for characteristics, but not terms for animals. Like, that's the only way I could see it being explained, why they, know what a platypus bear is, but they don't know what a bear is. You
yeah,
know,
it's just it's a bizarre concept to think about how like you have these terms, but you don't seem to understand what these terms are originally for. You only know how to combine them with things. Like just them saying, "Oh, it's just a bear," and then just I think it was Toph who was like, "This place is so weird."
yeah. Um,
Speaking of though, real quick, I want to talk about how much I love Toph. Just to bring it back to Avatar, like
I was
what a
about to say
great
the same
character.
thing. I was about to be like, yeah, can we talk about Toph a little bit? Like,
We shouldn't always talk about Toph. Toph is the best. Like what a great she's a great character. She's funny. She works on so many levels. It's amazing that people don't try to replicate her more often.
yeah,
Like
she tried to basically find her own way and get out of the whole like uh, nobility scene. Like she's your typical, like runaway princess type, where she's tired of the monotonous day to day, doesn't care about this, wants something better and different. Kind of like like a Jasmine situation where she's like, I just can't stand this. Like I don't want to be uh, basically like doted on and deal with like all this like noble shit. Like I want to be myself. And she kind of, I know I talk about this sometimes with like other movies and shows where they have like strong female characters, and what a lot of shows and movies tend to do these days is they tend to ruin that by making it like they're more badass and more like in your face about it, instead of just letting them be like a strong female character. They're like, we have to point out that they're a strong female character or else people won't like it. And it's like, no, you don't. Just let them be them. And there are
right.
scenes with Toph where they kind of touch on some things like that, but they don't throw it in your face. Like when her and Katara go and get like their makeup done and they be girly and everything, and they get laughed at by those other girls. But then it shows like, hey, well, we don't care. Like we're not going to listen to them. I think that's probably the most that they like threw it in your face were little things like that. And it showed that these were strong female characters without being like terrible about it, without being like, you need to love this or else you're ignorant. And it's like,
Right.
yeah.
Toph is an incredible answer of, or an incredible example of just showing instead of telling. And even
Yeah.
then, they tell a little bit, and it only adds to the fact that like what they're showing already. Like the first time we ever see her, she's a blind girl that steps out into a wrestling ring and she fights the Rock.
Yeah.
Like
The boulder is conflicted.
the boulder is over his conflicted feelings. It's the best. It's like they absolutely made a parody of Dwayne the Rock Johnson, just called him the Boulder. And then,
Yeah, it was a mix between The Rock and fucking Macho Man.
Just the way he introduced himself, yeah. Because even Dwayne Johnson never went as ham with his introductions on stage as that. That was incredible. But
that was the Macho Man side of it.
that was the Macho Man aspect, yeah, where he would just give like that sort of wheezy, like the boulder is ready.
Makes me think of Spider-Man.
It does, yes. That's actually where I was quoting that from. It's like, is ready.
Yep, you got 3 minutes, little man. 3 minutes of playtime.
Come on, Toph, you ain't leaving this cage alive. But yeah, no. Circling back, it's I absolutely love how like the first time we see her, she's trash talking, and then she just like one hit wonders this guy who everybody had just seen trouncing every other wrestler in the ring all day. Like he defeated like 3 or 4 other opponents before Toph. Then Toph comes up and she takes him down in just like one hit. Dodges. See, she's blind, but then she dodges his hits and then takes the guy out, and it's incredible. And then like she wows the audience with it or whatever. And I mean, it's so good. I'm also a fan of the idea that like part of the reason that everyone keeps forgetting she's blind is that with like her seismic sense, Toph doesn't act blind. Like
right.
She doesn't there's so little attention drawn to the fact that she's blind that because a lot of times she doesn't like need help or she's able to do things for herself, that people just forget. It's how they're able to get away with that fantastic joke of when they're flying over the desert looking for like the library.
Yep.
And she's like, there it is, and then everybody jumps over to the side of Appa, and they're looking around, and she's like, that's what it'll sound like when one of you spots it, and then just like waves her hand in front of her face. Woo, woo.
Or the whole like when they're hanging up the posters for Appa, and she's like, what, you think I can't do it? Like, you think I can't do it on my own? Yeah, slams it against the wall. And then she's like, It's upside down, isn't it? And it was just like completely backwards or whatever. Like,
It looks like a blank piece of paper on
yeah.
the wall.
So she thought like she just flipped it upside down, but no, she like completely just like slapped it on the wall backwards and everything. And
Oh god, it's so good. Oh man, yeah, it's so good. And she's so strong, like on her own and everything. And there's even like a talk where people are like, yeah, Toph is never really seen being defeated for any real length of time. Every time we see Toph, she's just kicking ass. Even when those two guys get the absolute jump on her and imprison her in a metal box, she invents metal bending and escapes.
I will
Like
say there's sorry, real quick. I will say there is two scenes where I see her like pretty vulnerable, and it really shows another side of her. But go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like this, like Aang is the Avatar, and he does like all these incredible feats of like death-defying bending and stunts, and he's freaking 12 years old. I think he ends the series when he's like 13 or something. But like he's this prodigal child and a force of nature, and the literal incarnation of a godlike spirit on the earth. I mean, Avatar. That's exactly what he is.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Toph is just this normal girl who is like, yeah, I'm good at earthbending, and I just keep practicing, and I just kick everyone's ass at it because that's who I am.
Yeah. So back to the two instances where I see like where she actually has like a I don't know exactly how to describe it, like a I know the word that's there, but I can't think of it.
Like a moment of emotional vulnerability.
Yeah. So once when she's in the water and she mistakes Suki for Sokka,
Right.
and
Yeah.
like you have to think though, she can't see. She's
No,
out
it's
there in the
true.
water. She can't see. She's terrified. And the other time when she's hanging off the balloon with Sokka, she has no visual, and all she has is Sokka. And she's like, I can't see. I am terrified. I am defenseless right now. Like
That. Oh
that
yeah.
takes away like all of her power. Like she can kick ass as long as she has some type of like ground and standing. Like anything she can sense. But you put her with no solid structure, and she is blind. She might be able to do some type of like movement, like with her bending and everything. But if she can't see what's going on, that's terrifying for her. She's learned to
Yeah.
live with being blind, and that's the one thing that she has is being able to like control that and get over that. Which I think is another really cool thing that they did about the show is they took like I don't want to call it a disability, but it's a disability. They took something like that and showed that you're not less because you have like some type of condition or disability. You can still do things, and I think that was a good thing. I like that type of stuff in like TV shows and movies and everything that they can show like characters who are overcoming things like that. It's a good like influence on kids that have like situations like that. Like I think there was another
Yes.
one, and I know it's not Avatar or anything, but Avengers. With War Machine when he had like the braces on his legs.
Yeah.
Like that was another big thing. Everyone really liked that because it was showing like, hey, you have representation, and it's not that stupid representation that gets thrown around a lot for random bullshit. This is something that like it shows, hey kid, you have someone to look up to that's just like you in like
Oh yeah.
a nice heartwarming way. It's not thrown in
Absolutely.
your face, it's just kind of there. And it shows that they're not shining this big spotlight on it being like, look, you can too. It's like it's just there. And I
It's not as
they crack,
forced.
yeah, they crack jokes with Toph and everything. But that's because it's a kid show, it's more lighthearted and everything. So it's, I mean, they're going to make it more obvious for a kid's show, but again, it's not thrown in your face obnoxiously. It's like,
First of all,
yeah.
I just want to point out that nobody cracks jokes harder at Toph's blindness than Toph herself.
Yeah, I mean, everyone else you see everyone else get awkward whenever she makes a joke about her being blind. They're kind of like, ooh, like, should we laugh? Should we, like, just kind of be okay with whatever she's saying? And she's the one making the jokes. And that's another good thing. Laugh at yourself.
She's so unconcerned about it. To her, she's like, it's just the way things are. Like, relax. She's like, I don't miss seeing because like I never saw before, and this is just how I live my life. And that she pokes fun at characters for it. Like a moment where it's awkward. Like is I think dialing it back even further, when you said the episode you saw the most was the drill, where they're like Toph hides them underground for a minute or so. And Sokka's like, I can't see a thing in here. And then Toph's like, oh no, what a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then Sokka's like, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, what a nightmare. Sorry.
Or Sokka's just like, oh yeah, maybe I'm kind of an asshole. But Toph's just like, I don't care, man. I'm making a joke. Stressful situation. I'm trying to decompress here. But no, it's God, it's so good. Like you said, we could do a whole episode about just talking about how studios don't handle concepts as well as they should have, and one of them is showing like strong characters who are like they're the strong female character, they're the strong character with a handicap, like to show them overcoming adversity. A lot of writers don't seem to get it. It's like, you don't need to force this down our throats. We have eyes, we can see it. If you tell us a good story, we can see this being a good thing, or we can see this character being incredible. Like, no one's stopping every 5 minutes to be like, Toph, I just want to say you're amazing. Or it's like, Toph, did I ever mention how incredible you are for overcoming your blindness with earthbending? It's like, no, it's something she just does.
Yeah.
It's like, she doesn't need the praise, and we don't need to hear it either. It's like, she knows she's awesome. We know she's awesome.
Yeah. And another really cool thing that kind of really shows her power is she held up that fucking library as it was sinking.
Jesus Christ, that was incredible to think about.
Like, that right there, she's that whole structure down underneath the sand and everything, she is using everything she had. Like, she wasn't stopping it, but she was holding it up pretty much. And she was trying to fight off like the poachers or bandits or whatever,
Yep.
She was fighting them off while she's holding up this giant ancient library under the sand.
She can't see. She can barely hear. Like, her normal seismic sense is totally just useless, or borderline useless in the sand.
Everything's fuzzy, yeah, because
yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah. It's in the sand. Everything's different. She even mentions it. Like, it's all fuzzy. She can't really see. It's not solid structure, solid stone. She can kind of see, but everything's blurry because it's sand.
She can't tell that the sandbenders are taking Appa. But she's hearing it, sort of like the wind is sort of howling in her ears at the moment. But she's like, Appa, what's going on? And then, meanwhile, she's like 4 foot nothing. Like in that show, she is tiny, and she spirals the sand beneath her feet into something that's firmer to stand on, then just like digs her fists into the side of the library and just tries to keep it from falling into the ground or sinking into the sand. And it's just incredible to think about. It's like, wow, this girl is nuts. Like, she's such a powerhouse. Like, I was even saying, like, the first time we see her, she's beating Dwayne The Rock Johnson Avatar style, and then every time we see her after that, it's like it's incredible. I'm like, yeah, the moments of emotional vulnerability, but showing emotional weakness isn't a character flaw. If anything, it's a strength. And all those moments where she does show like vulnerability or weakness, like in the 3rd season when she overhears, or she and Sokka are talking about like Katara cracking down on her hard for like running scams or whatever. She sort of has like this sad moment where she's like, yeah, look, my own mom is like overbearing or whatever, and I actually kind of appreciate Katara trying to look out for me, but as much as it frustrates me, I also appreciate it. And it's in a moment of emotional vulnerability, and it's like, Toph, that's real. Like, it's not a weakness. Like, the audience isn't thinking less of Toph because it's like, oh, she admitted to having feelings. It's like, no, Toph is super strong. She's just, she carries baggage with her, like most people do. She's dealing with it though.
And let's not forget, like, the struggles and everything that Katara went through. Like, she was a child when her mother was killed.
I flip flop on Katara a bit. I mean, most days I'll give her a lot of credit, and I will agree with everyone who praises Katara. It's like, yeah, Katara's got a lot going for her. She's a really strong character, really good, like platform for a lot of different stuff, and she's also just incredible on her own. But then there's other stuff where it's like, Katara, you're kind of a bitch. Like, I mean, I'm gonna bring up the one thing that I really hate about Katara. There was that one scene or whatever where oh, what was it? It was that same episode, I think. Oh no, it was a different episode. It was where she was on her little revenge plot and she was going after the leader of the Southern Raiders, the guy who killed her mom. And there's that moment where she like turns around and just yells at Sokka as he's trying to talk her down. He's like,
Zuko,
Katara, I lost my.
Oh, yeah, where she was. I thought you meant like during the scene, because she goes off with Zuko, but you're talking about when she was yelling at Sokka, like back at the camp?
Yeah, like everyone's trying to talk her down. Like Aang's trying to be like, "Hey, look, revenge isn't the way or whatever." And Katara's like, "I don't want to hear it, Aang." And then Sokka's like, "Look, Katara, it's super irresponsible of you to be doing this right now. We have bigger problems." And she's like, "I'm still doing this." And he's like, "Katara, you're not the only one who's suffering about this. She was my mom too." And then Katara just turns around and goes, "Then you clearly didn't love her as much as I did." And I'm just like, okay, that's clearly coming from a place of pain. But at the same time, fuck you, Katara. Like, holy shit. What a terrible thing to say to another human being.
Yeah,
your own brother, no less.
Yeah, especially your brother who went through the same pain as you. But I see why she felt that way, because Sokka kind of had like more or less a purpose when that happened. Like he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna grow up and protect. I'm not gonna let that happen again. And Katara was younger, and she didn't really have much of a purpose. Like in her tribe, there wasn't much like for her to do. She wasn't really given like a real task. Like she helped out where she could. She had chores, but she didn't have like that purpose. Sokka had a purpose at the end there, like, okay, my father's going off to fight in this war. All the rest of the men are going off to fight in this war. I have to stay here and protect them. I have a purpose. And that being said, like when you give, and I don't mean this in any way against the ladies or anything, but when you give like a man a purpose, that drives him to like the next level. Like he can get through almost anything that he is going through if he feels he has a purpose, or at least
something
that's
to focus on.
Yeah, like at least that's what I believe. That's what I've experienced. That's what I've seen in life. Like no matter what a man is going through, if he feels like he has a purpose in something, he will persevere. He will push through. And I'm again not saying that women aren't like that either. I'm just saying that's more ingrained in like a lot of the way men feel.
I'll agree with you that men being wired a bit differently will latch more onto purposes like that, and especially with like cultural backgrounds and stuff like that, and like the community you're raised in, and the way you're raised has a lot to do with how you see the world when you grow up. Sokka had that to latch onto. Yeah, Katara had a bit less. I mean, there was a lot less for her to be concerned about. I mean, strictly speaking, like, talking about outside of the context of the kid show, at Katara's age, she should kind of be looking at other men. Like, I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't sound creepy, but given the cultural context for what we know, like the level of civilization they exist at, Katara should kind of be looking at, like, honing domestic skills, and also like, looking at prospective husbands and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to be like Mr. Old Fashioned, like that's all women are good for. I'm just saying that in the context of the society that she lives in, that's more the norm of what she's looking at.
In her village, that's kind of how it plays out. It definitely is more traditional, where like the men are going off fighting or hunting or whatever, and the women are taking care of the at home everyday village. You can see that in the show, that's what their village does. That
Yeah,
being,
and
all the men went off to war, and the women are taking care of the village, raising the kids, farming. Well, I guess they don't really farm, but then they end up taking over like the hunting and stuff. And
right,
but like Katara and Sokka are going off fishing. Like
right.
so Sokka's taking over the responsibility of helping provide food for the village, and Katara is tagging along to help because
Yep,
she's
she's
one of the
got.
older kids.
Yep, she can help him. He's also her brother and everything. And like I know we're drawing a lot of very clear lines on the ground here to protect ourselves, but it also bears saying that it's like Katara also reached beyond all that, and she had support to do that too, and it was good for her, and she became something incredible.
Yeah,
Um,
she went
she
and they even talked later about like the one master didn't want to teach her because she was a girl, and she eventually ended up kicking his ass because he didn't believe like in her power or her skill, but she had a lot of confidence because that's all she had to focus on after her mother died, is because she
yeah
was hidden. Like that's her mother died because she was protecting her as a waterbender. Like they were trying to round up all the waterbenders. So Katara took that and started learning her skills. In the very first episode, she fucking cracks the iceberg on accident and sets Aang
yeah
free.
Yep, and we see her do some outrageous shit later too, as well. Like the list of Katara's accomplishments is like as long as my arm. It's incredible.
Yeah, she
Like
learned
we
bloodbending very quickly.
very quickly picked up on that shit just by seeing it happen. I gotta say, huge admirer of her as a character. One of the things I really liked about her though is like her own character arc, which doesn't get talked about as much. Which she starts out like season one, like she's like this bright-eyed and hopeful child, and she's going off into the world on a grand adventure to learn about enhance her own bending and like go on this grand adventure to save the world with the Avatar. I mean, the opening credits even goes, "I believe Aang can save the world," and that's how she sees it.
Yeah.
And as time goes on, though, especially once we hit season three, she starts to get pretty mean. Like she starts to get really weathered down by all that she's seen and all that she's done. She goes to a lot of places, does a lot of stuff, and one of the things that we really start to get from her is that she's getting her ass kicked just emotionally by a lot of what she's seeing. Like, I think a big breaking point for her is when the invasion happens, and then we see that she has to like leave her dad and like everyone else behind again, and she's just like, I don't want to do this again. I don't like but then of course they have to, and then all the younger kids leave and the adults get captured again after the invasion fails, the day of Black Sun. And then eventually Sokka and Zuko rescue their dad from the boiling rock and bring him back, and lo and behold, they're about to get separated again, and she puts her foot down and she's like, no, we're not doing this again. Like
Yeah.
they're tearing apart our family again, and you're just letting them. And everyone's like, Katara, we really don't have time for this. It has to happen. And she acquiesces, but it's clearly having an effect. Her conversations with Zuko just after he joins too were even. I mean, at the end of season two, Crossroads of Destiny, the famous episode. So she has a conversation with Zuko. I think that episode or the episode before, where she's offering him healing for his eye and talking to him about like being a better person or whatever, or talking about how she lost her mom. It's like, why can't you just leave us alone? Yada yada. The world's in pain. We're in pain. And Zuko is showing genuine remorse, and Katara then offers to heal him with the spirit water, and then he turns his back on her, and that she feels like she got slapped in the face by that betrayal. Like
Yeah.
they thought he was showing up to help at the end there, but then it turns out he's helping. He's trying to capture the Avatar to restore his honor or whatever.
Yeah, and that was a whole big part of his journey too, where it was pulling back and forth between his family and doing what he knows is right. Like he wants that approval, he wants to redeem himself, he wants to be looked at in a better light, but on the other hand, he also knows that in doing so, it would be the wrong decision. And he struggles with it back and forth. And then even later, when he finally decides, that he needs to be forgiven. He needs to help. Like, he understands that this is more important to help, like, the Avatar and to help, like, all the friends and everything.
Yep. The gang, as they are frequently called. Zuko's redemption story is top tier, but yeah, just capping off Katara there. It's like, yeah, it's like she started out as bright and hopeful, and then as time went on, she repeatedly just got hit hard, like not just physically, but like emotionally and intellectually with like the reality of stuff, and like she had those hopes crushed. Like we saw a naive child develop into this hardened warrior, and in a lot of ways, it's kind of painful to think about, because it's like she started out so bright and hopeful. She is completely unrecognizable, or almost unrecognizable, from the person we see at the end of book 3. Like Katara fighting near the end of the series versus Katara just leaving the South Pole are two completely different people. Not just in terms of skill, but in terms of outlook and personality. Like, normally you'd need like a time skip to justify that sort of character change, but no, it happens so gradually and pretty organically that honestly, by the time it happens, we're kind of like, no, this is Katara. She doesn't trust Zuko. She's pissed off. Leave her alone.
Yeah, she definitely has like quite the roller coaster throughout, like, 1 and 2, where especially with like her relationship with Aang, like that was kind of back and forth type of weirdness, and so somewhat felt like she was leading him on in some ways, and then somewhat like he was pursuing too hard in some ways.
It bears to remind everyone that these are also children we are talking about, and I don't mean like in a creepy way, but I mean in like a what the hell do these kids know about romance or normal relationships? Like, for that matter, that brings up another thing. What do these kids even know about normal relationships? We see full on that all of these kids are damaged to some degree or another at various points throughout the series. Like, Azula is probably the biggest example. Like, her big emotional breakdown after losing the fight to Zuko at the end is just encapsulates just what a broken individual she is. She has a full-on psychotic break in that episode.
Yeah, well, apparently in the books and everything, it goes deeper into all that stuff too. But it
does, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah, she definitely comes from like a pretty messed up situation too. I mean, same with Zuko, but she's trying to appease her father, and Zuko is trying to too, but he doesn't have that, like, he's more like his mother than he is his father, and Azula, like, doesn't care. Like, she's kind of was raised to just be like, you're gonna listen, you're gonna do what I want, and she was like, yep, I agree, I'll do what you want me to do. And Zuko would be like, well, why? So he kind of started questioning things pretty young, and she just went along with it, and it really kind of corrupted her and made her basically not really understand like friendships. You can see that in the like the beach like episode that they had, where she's trying to talk to the boys and everything, and she's trying to be friendly and all that, and she has no idea how to interact with people. Like, she only knows how to like bark orders and get what she wants. Like, she doesn't know how to interact with anyone.
And all she can do to flirt with what's his face, Ching or Chang or whatever his name is, I think it was like something meant to be like Chad or something. All she can do to flirt with him is like say some ominous shit, and then it turns into a threat of some kind at the end, and it's so terrible. And it's like, oh right, because these are not normal kids. These kids are busted up on the inside.
Yeah, so none of them really have like a relationship or understand relationships. I mean, even Sokka, when he really liked hold on, don't say it. Suki, no, not Suki. Who was the moon spirit?
The moon girl?
Yes.
Yue.
Yes. So she was like his first like actual girlfriend, and it was very short-lived, but he didn't really know how to approach any of that. And then when he finally just kind of started being himself, and she like opened up to him, is when he started kind of figuring that type of stuff out. And then later you see with Suki that he still had like these like bias, and he didn't really understand that. Yeah, he can do these things. Um, doesn't mean that like the girls in his life can't. And then he views like the soldiers. Uh, who are they again? They're the
The Kyoshi warriors.
yes.
Because their avatar Kyoshi is like warrior order, like
Yep.
descendants or whatever.
Yeah, they jessen her like makeup and everything.
Which is a pretty good look. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it looks horribly impractical, but it also looks like it's really cool. Like
Yeah.
I'm very impressed by it.
And then he realizes like who they are, and then comes back later and has that like humble moment where he's like, you're right, I don't know like how to beat you. I don't know how you guys do this. Like, can you teach me? I want to become better, and I'm admitting that you are better than I am. And
Which what a mature moment.
yeah, and that's how you see his relationships kind of start happening. Is for Sokka, his relationships, are kind of shitty to begin with, and then when he starts being himself and open and like receptive to, whoever like the girl is when you see that it starts to work out for him.
Right.
Until his girlfriend turned to the moon. That's rough, buddy.
That's rough, buddy.
What
man? What he part of Zuko's character journey? Yeah, being the guy who's like, I need to capture the Avatar. It's just like water tribe peasant, and going from hearing Sokka's girlfriend turn to the moon, being like, that's rough, buddy.
Yeah.
What? But yeah, circling back to the Kyoshi Warriors. Oh, also just to explain my earlier comment also about the impracticality. I get that part of it is actually fairly practical as far as their fighting style and stuff goes. The part to me that seems impractical is all the makeup that goes into it. I mean, I'm not a makeup expert, but I know enough to be like, it seems like you would sweat a lot during battle, and you would have to probably wear that makeup for a good long while. I don't imagine it would look too good after a long period of time.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that plus like you got to think about it. There are a lot of warriors who like it takes some time to put on their armor or their garb or whatever before they go into a fight. Like even like modern soldiers, they have a lot to put on, and then you look at like medieval knights, they have a squire to help put on their armor. So having like all this heavy makeup and everything, but then they have like pretty light wear. Like the makeup seems like it would be the hardest part. Like trying to, okay, let me get this on real quick. Let me go ahead and throw the rest of this on afterwards, and then they're good to go.
Right. To me, honestly, the eyeliner seems like the part of it that would take the longest to put on. It's like, so y'all just have to like bring mirrors with you when you go out in the field and put this on. I mean,
honestly, they probably do each other's. That would be the most logical sense. Is like they would put on each other's makeup.
That shows my ignorance in regards to makeup right there. I completely missed the fact that they would probably just do each other's, because they travel in units. Like they probably wouldn't be traveling alone, so they would just do each other's makeup. And I was like, okay, you know what, that makes sense.
Yeah, it wouldn't be them like, okay, girls, let's put on our makeup, and they all go to separate sides of the room with a mirror. Like they would probably like, okay, we're gonna help everybody get their robes on real quick, and then I'm gonna help you do yours. You help this person, and we'll all get it done pretty quickly. The same way, like I said, like your squire would put on your armor for you. Like Vikings put on each other's like war paint and everything, and then like Native Americans and stuff too. Like they could do what they did themselves, and then if they couldn't, they would help each other.
Right. That makes. I mean, I was all right. We've established that Lennex knows relatively little about makeup. Okay, he didn't think about people helping each other. It always seems like a solo operation. What can I say? I was picturing like the in the past like makeup rooms and stuff like that, where everyone has like their own like mirror, and they're all working on their own shit or whatever. But I guess different, if you're all just doing the exact same thing, it would make sense that you would all just be helping each other, especially if you're in a situation where no one has a goddamn mirror.
Yeah.
But okay, all right, we've established. That's my bad.
You're not just a seal, like dipping your hand in paint, grease paint, and then doing like a couple streaks across your face.
Yeah, well, this is a much more elaborate paint job. They got to paint the whole face. They got to make sure it doesn't, they don't stick their hair to their face by accident. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into the logistics of applying makeup. But in any case, honestly, Suki, a great character on her own, also, and yeah, Sokka's first girlfriend, because he cross-dressed in order to impress her. That was part of Sokka's journey from going from a male-dominated environment where all the men are warriors and protectors and providers, and going into a society where it's like, no, women do that here too. And he's of course dismissive at first because that's how such a person would be. It's it'd be weird if he was very accepting of it. Actually, one thing that's really funny about that episode, I just remembered. So Nickelodeon used to do these things like "Did you know?" or "Little known facts" or whatever, that they would just pop up on the screen while you were watching episodes of Avatar. There's some line that Zuko gives in that episode where he shows up in the village and he's burning it down, trying to find the Avatar, and he says some line about these little girls can't protect you, Avatar. And then there's a pop-up that the writers put on the bottom of the screen that's just not true. Little girls can do whatever they put their minds to.
Yeah, they had those little pop-ups in that show quite a bit. I remember little random ones.
Yep, that was the one that I always laughed at, because I was like, okay, writers, we get it. You wrote the girl power episode, but nothing wrong with the girl power episode if it's done right. Case in point, the Kyoshi Warriors episode was a great way to do that. I absolutely do love the Kyoshi Warrior aesthetic. Suki's a great character, and I love the idea that there's this order of warriors that's built as the legacy of a previous Avatar.